And, you know, all of this, they say, is in service, Keith, of serving the environment, protecting the environment. We've got to go to net zero to protect the environment. Oh, God bless the environment. But you have uncovered some disturbing facts about what is going to happen on the road to this green energy utopia. Tell us about what you discovered about what's happening with some of these wind farms that are planned in places like Queensland in native koala habitat. What is going to happen to our poor beloved koalas who, I seem to recall during the bushfires a couple of years ago, that image of a koala being fed water during the bushfires was used against Scott Morrison. Apparently koalas are a bit more expendable now. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, it's everything's about wind and solar and protecting koalas unless you're going to get rid of koalas. And I've got to give credit to Michelle Landry. She broke the story a couple of months ago. 1,450 hectares. I went and read the Environmental Management Plan, and it literally says 1,450 hectares odd of koala habitat has to be destroyed in order to build the Clark Creek wind farm. So that is dozers knocking down trees, destroying habitat. They did a quick sample survey. They counted 17 of them, and that'll just be in one little part. So all projects are equal, except some are more equal than others. So if it's wind or solar, you can do whatever you like. But heaven help us if you want to put a dam in for water supply for towns or irrigation, or you want to grow food. Who'd have thought it? You can't do any of that. You can't have a coal mine or another resource product without doing a whole heap of other work. But if you're putting these up, that doesn't matter. You can do anything you like, including knocking them on the back of the head, apparently, if they get injured.
And sorry, Rita, just explain that. What is this about crushing the skulls of koalas or blunt trauma, or where did that come from?
Well, that is actually out of one of the control measures from a document for the Clark Creek wind farm that was provided to me. And that's what it says. If you have injured wildlife up to a medium size, reptiles and mammals, etc., a sharp blow to the back of the skull with a blunt instrument is the way to deal with them. So clearly they're expecting animals to be injured. And what else would you expect? If you're going to clear more than 1,400 hectares, that's over 3,000 acres. Right? Don't underestimate that this is a big chunk of land. Well, of course they'll be injured because you're knocking down their trees. So that's how they manage it. I just think, you know, the people of the city, the socialists, the rich socialists, well, where are you? You're not up there tying yourself to bulldozers on these types of projects.
Well, no, it's the only projects that just go ahead regardless of the damage. And yet we had, on Friday, the federal court ordered Santos to stop the Barossa project, the gas project. They're just hours before work was about to commence. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, my understanding for Santos work was about to recommence. They were already more than 50% through the projects, my understanding. It's a $5 or $6 billion investment. That means you get to keep the Darwin LNG plant alive for another 20 years and all the jobs that go with it and the export money into the Territory. And the Northern Territory actually needs that economic boost. It's even worse in the West. Scarborough's more than $15 billion. It's held up because of another appeal, both through the Environmental Defender's Office, funded by the Australian Labor Party through the budget of the federal government via taxpayers to shut down big projects that we need. But it's all right if you're going to put 800 tonne of concrete in a hole in the ground and a 200 metre plus wind turbine, that's fine. You can do whatever you want, knock down anything you like, kill any part of the local wildlife, that seems fine, as long as you're meeting the ideology and Mr Chalmers' dream team.
And well, at least, sorry, just quickly, James, at least they'll be consistent, because after killing all the koalas, they'll then go on to kill all the eagles and the birds that are flying around with the wind turbines. So at least they're consistent in destroying the planet. James.
Yeah, and Keith, I want to ask you, too, about the politics of all of this, because you've got a federal election probably in about 18 months, more or less. I note that Peter Dutton has been spending an awful lot of time on the north coast, central north coast of New South Wales, seats like Patterson, where people are very upset about offshore wind turbines. Yep. Now, how much of do you think that this issue is going to play in your favour, the net zero transition, from an environmental, not an economic point of view, one, and how can you then take this to the electorate if the coalition still has net zero on the books as a policy?
Well, this is one of the big differences between a nuclear power station and 1,000 wind turbines twice the height of the Sydney Harbour Bridge offshore Newcastle. Nuclear has a very small footprint. In fact, it doesn't take up much room at all. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for up to 100 years, would you believe? These things last for about 20 years. And in those seats like Patterson and around Newcastle and into the Hunter, who rely on coal jobs and the resources sector and the Newcastle port, well, guess what? They don't want them there. They don't like the idea, and I saw the protests up against PEP 11, something I was responsible for. I mean, the proposal there was actually just to continue the permit. It wasn't even an application for an exploration rig, and if there was, there'd be just one single exploration rig. These things are enormous, and you need over 1,000 of them to meet Mr Bowen's dream of 5,000 megawatts of offshore wind in that Hunter zone. The water gets deep really quick. It's super expensive. They're in the middle of the ocean. And won't someone just think of the whales? Won't anyone think of the whales?
The whales used to be the big thing of the left. Now, of course, the whales are all forgotten about. But well done to those brave people up in Port Stephens and Newcastle who are speaking up against these atrocities, these monstrosities. Keith Pitt, always great to chat to you. Thanks so much. Keith Pitt, Nationals MP there, does a brilliant job.